My friends, there are moments in history when ordinary men and women, people who were never written about in the newspapers, people who walked the dusty roads of life unseen, suddenly rise to heights that the world never expected. And when you look at their stories, you discover one thing: it was not luck, it was not chance, it was the hand of God's favor opening doors no man could shut. I have seen a widow turn her tears into strength, raise her children with dignity, and later watch those children rise as leaders. I have seen young men with nothing but a dream in their pockets build businesses that employ thousands. I have seen communities rise from devastation, not because they had resources, but because they had resilience, faith, and the audacity to believe that tomorrow could be greater than today. You see, destiny does not ask permission. When God has written your name into a future, no circumstance can erase it. Favor is not about where you were born, the color of your skin, or the family you came from. It is about a divine appointment, a moment when heaven says, now is the time. But listen carefully, favor must find you faithful. Too many of us want the blessing without the discipline, the elevation without the endurance. The road to greatness is paved with perseverance, with rising after you fall, with refusing to let failure define your story. Change begins not in the palace, but in the heart of a man or woman who says, I will not quit. So I say to you, do not despise the days of small beginnings. Do not be ashamed of the struggle. Every scar, every sleepless night, every rejection is preparing you for a stage you cannot yet see. And when that day comes, when God's favor lifts you higher than your credentials, higher than your connections, higher than your qualifications, the world will stand in awe, and they will know it was God who did it. This is not the time to shrink back. This is the time to rise, to take responsibility for your gift, to sharpen your mind, to guard your integrity, and to hold fast to your faith. The future does not belong to the fearful. It belongs to those who dare to believe in it. So I declare to you today, walk with courage, speak with conviction, live with vision, because God's favor is about to put you in a place that will shock the world. My friends, let me remind you of something that life often tries to make us forget. Greatness is not reserved for the few, for the wealthy, for the privileged, or for those born in the right place at the right time. Greatness is a gift that God chooses to deposit in ordinary people, men and women who often don't even realize the depth of what is inside them. History is filled with names that once were unknown, unnoticed, even unwanted. Yet when God's favor rested on them, they rose to heights that shocked the world. Think about it, a shepherd boy in the fields of Bethlehem, forgotten by his own father when the prophet came looking for a king. Everyone overlooked, but God's favor was searching for him. That boy was David. He wasn't tall like his brothers. He wasn't trained for battle, but he had something greater: God's hand on his life. And when the time came, that ordinary boy stepped forward with nothing but a sling and a stone, and the world witnessed the extraordinary. That is what favor does. Favor takes a fisherman who smells of salt and seaweed and makes him a fisher of men whose words change nations. Favor takes a woman at a well, broken by life and rejected by society, and makes her the first evangelist of her city. Favor takes a young orphan girl named Esther living in exile and puts her in a palace to save an entire nation. Do you see it? Over and over again, God specializes in taking what the world calls ordinary and breathing something extraordinary into it. Now let me speak to you personally. Some of you are sitting right now thinking you are too small, too weak, too unqualified, too late. You are looking at your life and measuring it by your bank account, by your degree, by your connections, by your failures. But hear me, destiny does not begin with what you have in your hand. It begins with what God has already placed in your heart. The favor of God is not about human calculation. It is not about what family you were born into or what nation's soil you stand on. Favor breaks through every barrier and every limitation. I've seen it with my own eyes. A young man who came from poverty, who had no resources and no opportunities, but he had a vision in his spirit. He worked when no one noticed. He prayed when no one listened. He believed when no one encouraged him. Years later, God opened a door for him that no man could close. Today, he is leading a company that employs hundreds of people. How did it happen? Not by his credentials, not by his connections, but by the extraordinary favor of God on an ordinary life. And you know what is powerful? Ordinary people don't even realize when God is preparing them. Sometimes favor shows up disguised as struggle. Sometimes favor looks like being hidden. Sometimes favor feels like rejection. But let me tell you this, what the world calls rejection, God calls redirection. The people who overlooked you, the places that ignored you, the doors that closed in your face, they were part of the preparation. Because when the extraordinary season comes, no one will be able to deny that it was God who lifted you. But understand this: favor is not an excuse to sit idle. Favor is an invitation to be faithful. David didn't wait to fight Goliath before learning how to use his sling. He was faithful in the fields, practicing when no one saw him. Esther didn't become queen because she was beautiful. She became queen because she was prepared when her moment came. Joseph didn't walk into Pharaoh's palace untested. He went through betrayal, through prison, through years of waiting, but he held on to his faith. And when the day of favor arrived, he was ready. So the question is not whether God can take an ordinary life and make it extraordinary. The question is, are you willing to be faithful with what is in your hand today? Are you willing to prepare in the quiet places where no one is applauding you? Are you willing to keep believing even when nothing seems to be changing? Because the extraordinary does not come overnight. It comes to those who persevere, those who endure, those who remain steadfast when the world expects them to give up. I want you to think about this truth. The extraordinary is not about being noticed. It is about being positioned. You may feel unnoticed today, but that does not mean you are unprepared. You may feel overlooked by people, but you are not overlooked by God. And when His favor collides with your faithfulness, ordinary will no longer describe you. Ordinary will no longer define your life. People will look at you and wonder, how did this happen? And the only answer will be, it was God. So many people pray for favors. They cry out for opportunities, for blessings, for doors to open, for miracles to appear. But here is the truth that often goes unspoken: favor must find you faithful. Favor is not a free ticket to success. Favor is not a shortcut to bypass preparation. Favor is God's way of multiplying what you have already proven faithful with. When we read about Joseph, it is easy to celebrate the moment he stood before Pharaoh, interpreting dreams and being promoted to second in command over Egypt. But favor didn't begin in the palace. Favor found him in a pit where his brothers betrayed him. Favor found him in Potiphar's house, where he worked with integrity even though he was still a slave. Favor found him in prison, where he could have grown bitter, but instead he continued to serve others with excellence. Every season was a test, and every test was an opportunity to prove faithfulness. By the time Pharaoh called him, Joseph was not only gifted, he was faithful. And that is why favor could lift him higher than any human connection ever could. Faithfulness is not glamorous. It is not something that makes headlines or attracts crowds. It is the unseen work of the heart, the discipline of character, the daily choices you make when nobody is clapping for you. Faithfulness is showing up on time when nobody is watching. Faithfulness is telling the truth when lying would be easier. Faithfulness is giving your best even when the world gives you less. Favor without faithfulness will destroy a person, because favor can open doors that character cannot keep open. That is why God allows the process, so that when favor comes, you are ready to carry it. Let me remind you of David again. Before he ever held a crown, he held a harp. He served Saul, the very king who later tried to kill him, with music that soothed his troubled spirit. Before he ever faced Goliath, he faced lions and bears in the field. Nobody wrote about those battles. Nobody applauded his courage. But he was faithful in the unseen places. So when the time came, favor elevated him in the seen places. You cannot demand Goliath-sized opportunities if you are unwilling to be faithful with lion-sized responsibilities. There are some of you right now asking God for a platform, asking Him for a breakthrough, asking Him for abundance. And God is saying, show me what you are doing with what you already have. If you are careless with the little, why should heaven trust you with more? If you cannot manage your time, how will you manage your destiny? If you cannot keep your word in small matters, how will you stand when the weight of nations is placed on your shoulders? Favor is not magic. Favor is God's acceleration of faithfulness. Think about the parable of the talents. One was given 5, another was given 2, another was given 1. The ones who multiplied what they were given heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with little, I will set you over much." But the one who buried his talent out of fear lost even the little he had. Why? Because favor cannot reward fear and laziness. It only rewards faithfulness and diligence. Heaven will not promote what you refuse to steward. Faithfulness also means staying committed when it would be easier to quit. Noah was faithful for over 100 years, building an ark when there was no sign of rain. People mocked him, ridiculed him, called him foolish, but he remained faithful. And when the flood came, favor lifted the ark above the waters. Daniel was faithful to pray 3 times a day, even when it meant facing lions. and favor shut the mouths of those lions. Ruth was faithful to follow Naomi when she could have chosen an easier life, and favor placed her in the lineage of kings. Over and over again, the pattern is the same. Favor comes to those who refuse to compromise their faithfulness. The world celebrates talent, but God celebrates faithfulness. The world rewards charisma, but God rewards consistency. Anybody can be excited for a moment. Faithfulness is proven over time. Anybody can serve when it is convenient. Faithfulness is proven when it is costly. Anybody can speak words of commitment. Faithfulness is proven in action. So if you are in a season where it feels like nothing is happening, do not despise it. It may be the very season where heaven is watching to see if you can be trusted. Can you still sing when no one is listening? Can you still give when no one is thanking you? Can you still pray when no one is answering? Faithfulness in the hidden places is the price for favor in the public places. Favor will open doors that people cannot explain, but faithfulness is what ensures you will remain once you walk through those doors. The two cannot be separated. God is not looking for the most gifted, the most connected, the most talented. He is looking for the most faithful. And when he finds faithfulness, he adds favor, and the combination will shock the world. Every great story has a humble beginning. Every towering tree begins as a seed, buried beneath the soil, unseen, uncelebrated, and unrecognized. Every river begins as a trickle, a drop of water flowing unnoticed through hidden valleys before it grows into a mighty current. The mistake many people make is that they look at their small beginning and assume that it defines their future. But the truth is this: the beginning is not the end. The seed is not the tree. The trickle is not the river. The small beginning is only the birthplace of something greater. When we look at the scriptures, we see a God who delights in starting small. The nation of Israel began with one man, Abraham, wandering without a home, holding only a promise. The Savior of the world entered not through a palace, not through a throne, but through a manger in Bethlehem. The kingdom of God itself was compared to a mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, yet it grows into a tree that shelters the birds of the air. Never despise small beginnings, because what looks insignificant today carries the potential to change nations tomorrow. Some of you are frustrated because your life doesn't look like the vision in your heart. You see yourself leading, building, creating, impacting, but what you hold in your hand right now feels too little, too weak, too small. You feel overlooked, underestimated, even forgotten. But hear me, small does not mean insignificant. Hidden does not mean forgotten. The size of your beginning does not limit the scale of your future. Every seed looks small until it grows. Every dream looks impossible until it manifests. Every story of greatness starts with a chapter that doesn't look like much. David began in a field with sheep. Nobody called him a king. Nobody saw the crown. He was just a boy playing his harp, writing songs, protecting sheep from predators. But in that hidden place, his hands were learning skill. His heart was learning courage. His spirit was learning trust. And when the day came, what he practiced in small beginnings prepared him for the giant that would change his destiny. The giant didn't make him great. The field did. The moment everyone saw was not the making of him. It was the revealing of him. Joseph's story began with a dream, but his journey began with betrayal and slavery. For years, it looked like nothing was happening. But in every small beginning, in Potiphar's house, in the prison cell, he was proving his faithfulness. Those beginnings didn't look glorious, but they were necessary. By the time he stood before Pharaoh, Joseph was already ready. What looked like small beginnings was God's classroom for greatness. Do not despise where you are right now. Some of you are working jobs that feel beneath you, building projects that nobody notices, raising children in the quiet of your home without applause. Do not despise it. Small beginnings are often disguised as preparation. They are the soil where God plants the seed of your destiny. And like any good farmer, God does not plant a seed to leave it buried. He plants it to grow. But before it grows upward, it must grow downward. Before the tree reaches into the sky, its roots must reach into the ground. Your small beginnings are your roots. They are building strength for the weight of what is coming. You may look at others and compare their progress with yours. You may see someone who seems to be ahead, someone who has the spotlight, someone whose life looks bigger, louder, more successful. But remember this: the oak tree and the mustard plant do not grow at the same pace, but both fulfill their purpose. Do not measure your journey by someone else's timeline. The question is not how fast you grow. It is how strong you are when the storm comes. And strength is forged in small beginnings. The world may overlook small beginnings, but God never does. The world celebrates the fruit. But God celebrates the root. The world crowns the tree, but God waters the seed. And sometimes the reason your beginning feels so small is because your future will be so great. God often hides great destinies in humble beginnings so that when the elevation comes, no one can say it was man's doing. It will be clear it was God's hand. So do not despise the day of small beginnings. That little business idea you're starting in your living room has the potential to employ hundreds. That book you are writing in the quiet of the night could inspire nations. That act of kindness you think nobody noticed could ripple through generations. Every great fire begins with a spark. Every great move begins with a step. Every great destiny begins with a beginning that does not yet reveal its end. The future has never belonged to the fearful. Fear paralyzes, fear limits. Fear locks people in the prison of what is instead of what can be. Throughout history, every great advancement, every breakthrough, every transformation has been born from someone who dared to believe in a reality that did not yet exist. They saw beyond the present. They believed in something that others could not see, and because of their belief, they walked into a future that others only dreamed about. Belief is powerful. It is the engine of destiny, the fuel that carries you through obstacles, the light that guides you through darkness. Belief is not just optimism, it is conviction. It is the courage to look at the impossible and still declare it can be done. It is the determination to face resistance and still move forward. It is the quiet assurance that what God has placed in your heart is greater than what the world has placed in your way. When you look at the lives of people who changed the course of history, you will notice one thing. They believed when others doubted. Noah believed in rain before a drop ever touched the earth. Abraham believed he would be the father of nations when his body was old and his wife's womb was barren. Moses believed that a stuttering man could stand before Pharaoh, speak with authority. Mary believed that a virgin could give birth to a savior. Time and time again, the future unfolded for those who dared to believe in what God had spoken over their lives. But belief is not easy. Belief will always be tested. When you dare to believe, you will face opposition, because belief threatens fear. Belief challenges doubt. Belief defies limitation. When David believed he could defeat Goliath, people mocked him. When Nehemiah believed he could rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, enemies tried to stop him. When Jesus spoke about a kingdom not of this world, the religious leaders accused him, the crowds misunderstood him, and his own disciples doubted him. Yet the future always gravitates to those who believe enough to endure the testing of their faith. You see, the future is not just about talent or resources or connections. There are many people with talent who never reach their destiny because they do not believe they can. There are people with resources who never build anything because fear convinces them it's not enough. There are people with connections who remain stuck because they cannot see beyond their limitations. The deciding factor is not what is in your hand, it is what is in your heart. Belief turns the little in your hand into much. Belief turns your present limitation into tomorrow's testimony. Think about the world we live in today. Every invention, every innovation, every discovery started as belief in someone's mind. The airplane was born because two brothers believed that man could fly. The light bulb exists because one man believed that failure was just another step toward success. Nations were liberated because leaders believed in freedom more than they feared oppression. Belief is not just spiritual, it is practical. It shapes the world around us. Because those who believe are willing to attempt what others call impossible. And belief is contagious. When you believe, you give others permission to believe. When you stand with courage, you ignite courage in those around you. When you speak with conviction, you awaken conviction in others. Your belief doesn't just change your future, it influences the future of those connected to you. That is why the enemy fights belief so fiercely. He doesn't just want to stop you. He wants to stop the generations that your belief would inspire. So let me ask you today, what do you believe? Do you believe that your past has the power to limit your future? Or do you believe that your future is greater than your past? Do you believe that your current struggle is permanent? Or do you believe that it is preparing you for something greater? Do you believe the voices of doubt? Or do you believe the voice of God that whispers? All things are possible to him who believes. Belief is a choice. It is not determined by circumstances. It is not dictated by what you see with your eyes. Belief is a decision of the heart. You choose to believe even when evidence says otherwise. You choose to believe even when people walk away. You choose to believe even when time seems to be running out. That is why belief is so powerful. It does not require perfect conditions. It creates new conditions. The future belongs to those who dare to believe. It belongs to the ones who believe enough to keep going when the path is rough. It belongs to the ones who believe enough to dream when the world says dreamers are foolish. It belongs to the ones who believe enough to see what others cannot see, and to hold on until what they see in their spirit becomes what the world sees with their eyes. There are moments in life when the natural order of things cannot explain what is about to happen. There are seasons when the ordinary steps of progress are suddenly interrupted by a divine acceleration. You may not have the qualifications, you may not have the connections, you may not even have the resources, but when the favor of God rests upon your life, it does what no man can do. God's favor is about to put you in a place that will shock the world. When we look through the stories of history, we see this pattern repeated again and again. Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister in a single day. Nothing in his summé could have explained that promotion. He was a foreigner falsely accused, forgotten by men, and yet in a moment, Pharaoh called his name and the favor of God lifted him from the darkness of a cell into the brilliance of a palace. That is what divine favor does. It does not follow human timelines, it creates its own. Think about Esther. She was a young orphan girl living in exile with no influence, no family to push her forward, no wealth to secure her position. And yet the favor of God carried her into the palace of Persia and placed a crown on her head. It wasn't her beauty alone, it wasn't her background, it wasn't her connections, it was God's favor. And when the destiny of an entire nation was at stake, it was her voice, the voice of an orphan turned queen, that God used to bring deliverance. Favor put her there, and the world was shocked. David was another example. A shepherd boy overlooked even by his own father, called last when Samuel asked for Jesse's sons. And yet, when God's favor rested on him, he was anointed king in the presence of his brothers. Nobody expected it. Nobody voted for it. But the oil flowed over his head, because when favor chooses you, no man can cancel it. Years later, the same boy who was mocked as insignificant stood on the battlefield, holding the head of Goliath in his hands, and all of Israel was stunned. Favor always produces moments that shock the world. Now, let me bring this closer to you. There are people watching you who have already written your story in their minds. They think they know how far you can go. They think they know what you are capable of. They think they know the limits of your future. But what they don't realize is that there is a favor in your life that does not come from men. It comes from God. And when God is ready to reveal it, he will lift you to a place that not only surprises them, it will silence them. Sometimes favor will take you where credentials cannot. Sometimes favor will open doors that money cannot. Sometimes favor will create opportunities that connections cannot. That is why you must never measure your destiny by the world's standards. You may not have what they say is required, but you have what heaven has decided is enough. Favor is the equalizer. It takes the least likely and makes them the most impactful. It takes the rejected and makes them the cornerstone. It takes the underestimated and places them in positions of influence. But here is the truth about favor. It often comes after seasons of struggle. Before Joseph stood in Pharaoh's court, he stood in prison. Before David held a crown, he held a sling. Before Esther wore a royal robe, she wore the weight of uncertainty. Struggle is not the absence of favor. It is often the preparation for it. Because when favor lifts you, people must know it was not your strength, it was not your brilliance, it was not your power, it was God. So do not be discouraged by where you are now. Your current position does not define your final destination. The rejection you face, the closed doors you encounter, the silence you endure, they are not the end of your story. They are simply the stage being set for a moment of favor that will leave the world in awe. When God is ready, he does not need permission. When God decides, he does not ask for a vote. He will move you from the background to the forefront, from hidden to honored, from overlooked to undeniable. And when it happens, it will not just be for your sake. Joseph's favor saved nations from famine. Esther's favor saved her people from destruction. David's favor brought victory to Israel. Your favor is not just for you. It is for everyone connected to your destiny. God's favor is not about selfish promotion. It is about divine purpose. When he puts you in that place, it is because he intends to use you as a vessel to reveal his glory. My friends, we have walked through the truth that ordinary people become extraordinary when God's favor touches their lives. We have seen that favor is never random. It must find you faithful, tested in the quiet places where no one is watching. We have learned never to despise the day of small beginnings, because what looks like little now carries the seed of greatness. We have been reminded that the future does not belong to the fearful or the hesitant. It belongs to those who dare to believe when everything around them says otherwise. And above all, we stand on the unshakable promise that God's favor is about to put you in a place that will shock the world. So lift your head. Do not measure your life by where you started. Do not limit your future by what you see today. The same God who raised shepherds into kings, orphans into queens, prisoners into prime ministers is the same God who is writing your story. His favor will not just open doors, it will open the right doors. His favor will not just elevate you, it will position you exactly where you are meant to be. His favor will not just bless you, it will impact generations after you. This is the moment to believe again. This is the moment to remain faithful. This is the moment to embrace your small beginnings, to persevere through the struggle, to dare to dream, to dare to believe. Because the hand of God is not finished with you yet. The stage of your destiny is being set, and when His favor is revealed, the world will not only see you differently, they will see Him through you.